It sort of sets the stage for their whole relationship, in my opinion, where she is the one who is awake, actively trying to make things happen throughout their time together, while he is just sleepily going through the motions. Hello, and thank you for joining me here at Why the Book Wins, where I compare books with their movie adaptations. Today I am talking about The Way We Were by Arthur Laurents, published in 1972, and I'm comparing it with the Sydney Pollack movie, which was released in 1973. This was requested by Adam, a Patreon member. Thank you so much for your support. But he requested this back in September, and then literally like a couple days later, Robert Redford died. So the timing was pretty insane. Also, September's Patreon exclusive book versus movie was for The Great Gatsby, and that was already decided on. I had already filmed and finished the video, and then later that month, Redford died. So once again, crazy timing. This happened, speaking of Robert Redford, I covered Ordinary People, which stars Donald Sutherland, and Robert Redford directed that movie. And so yet again, I had filmed the video and scheduled it for release when then Donald Sutherland died. And Cormac McCarthy, I scheduled my No Country for Old Men to be released the day after he ended up dying. So I'm not saying I'm psychic by any means, but it's just sort of crazy. The timing with some of these projects I'm already working on, and then someone involved dies. So anyway, The Way We Were, I had not planned on covering this, and even when I got the request, I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll do it. But then the fact that Redford died is what really pushed me to finally cover this one. And by the way, if you want to hear my thoughts on The Great Gatsby, I talk about the 70s film as well as the DiCaprio movie, so if you join the $2 tier on Patreon, you can hear my thoughts on The Great Gatsby. I really like that book. It gets a lot of hate. I guess it's overhyped, overrated, but I like the book a lot. But anyway, so at the $2 tier, you can watch that video. So thank you again to Adam for requesting this, and from here on out I will get into the details of the plot, which means there will be spoilers going forward. So the book and movie are pretty similar, and yet Arthur Laurents, he was unhappy with how the film turned out. And I will be talking about him more specifically and what inspired him to write this book, as well as he wrote the script for the movie. So I'll be talking about that too, because it gets a little meta. So I'll be touching on that a bit more later in the video. But the basic gist for both book and movie: we have Katie and Hubbel, who meet in college in the late 1930s, and Katie is a member of the Young Communists League, and she is a radical who gets strikes going on and is always passing out flyers and is very passionate about current events, whereas Hubbel is a rich WASP jock who doesn't take anything seriously. And they have a creative writing class together where Katie tries very hard to impress their teacher, but unfortunately she just doesn't have the skill, whereas Hubbel's work is read aloud because it is so good. And Katie forms a crush on Hubbel when she hears how good his paper is, because she's like, wow, he's actually so deep. And Hubbel, he knows who Katie is, and he takes an interest in her, and he seems to admire her passion to some extent, and he finds her amusing. But ultimately nothing comes of this until they meet about 5 to 7 years later, and now we are in World War II, and she sees him at a bar in New York City, and she is dead set on having a relationship with him, on making something happen, which I was kind of confused by. Like, as far as the movie goes, obviously he's charismatic and charming and handsome. It's Robert Redford. So on that level, I can understand the appeal, but it's like, why was she, like, she was determined, and I guess I was sort of confused as to why she wanted to try so hard to get this guy. But anyway, she does make it happen, and they do have a relationship despite them not agreeing on many things, and she doesn't like his friends because they're rich snobs who don't take anything seriously, whereas Katie takes everything incredibly seriously. And he does try to break up with her at one point, but once again, she basically talks him into staying with her, and we then flash forward to them being married and now living in Malibu because, by the way, he had written a novel which she was so impressed by, and in the book she inspires him to write a second novel, and that one, I don't think it's ever published, but he does end up selling it to Hollywood to be made into a movie, and so that's why they go to Hollywood, is to adapt his second book, whereas in the movie they move to Malibu because he is adapting his original book into a movie. But then we are in the 1950s, and this is when McCarthyism hits, and Hollywood, of course, was directly impacted by this. And so she, Hubbel, and their colleagues all have this drama going on with people naming names and people losing their jobs and being blacklisted. And also in both, she finds out that he had been cheating on her. And so because of those things going on, as well as some other stuff I'll get into, ultimately they decide to end the marriage. However, she is pregnant. So in both, they stay together until she gives birth, and then they go their separate ways. But then we once again flash forward now about 4 years into the future, and she is back in New York, and she is her old self and fighting the good fight and doing protests once again when she sees Hubbel with his new wife. And she too is now remarried, and her new husband is who has been raising her and Hubbel's child together. But they reconnect, and she says the line that Sex and the City made famous. I mean, it was famous before Sex and the City, but I think a lot of people have watched this movie because of Sex and the City, because it's such an iconic episode.
Your girl is lovely, Hubbel.
I don't get it.
And you never did.
But anyway, she says the line, "Your girl is lovely, Hubbel," and they part ways, knowing that they will never love anyone else the way they loved each other. But because they had such an intense love is also why their relationship couldn't work. And so their new spouses are easier to be with, but neither has the passion and love that they'd had when they were together. And because they still feel that for each other, they know that they can't be friends and they can never see each other again. And that is how the movie ends, and the book. And so to talk about their New York relationship, that phase first, so she sees him at a bar and he is falling asleep, and a woman is there next to him trying to get his attention. However, ultimately, Katie is able to get him away from this lady and takes him back to her place, where he then promptly falls asleep in her bed. And so she then gets naked and gets in bed next to him, and she's cuddling up to him, getting him to cuddle with her despite him being asleep. And eventually he kind of semi-wakes up enough to have sex with her. But after he's done, because he's still so out of it, he's half asleep, she tells him you do know it's Katie, right? I need you to know that this is Katie. And then the next morning he wakes up and he acts like it didn't even happen. Who knows if he even remembers it? But he's like, "Oh wow, sorry about sleeping so much. I've been so tired lately." And she then gives him her number in case he needs a place to stay next time he is in New York, because he is currently being stationed in Washington, D.C. And eventually he does call her, purely because he needs a place to stay. And he plans to use her apartment basically as a hotel and just stay there, but go out and do his own thing. And in the book, he is on the phone when she comes in and he is talking to someone being like, "Oh yeah, I can head over there in 10 minutes. So obviously he's not planning on staying. Whereas in the movie, he has already left and she goes chasing after him, because in both, she had bought a ton of stuff in order to make him a nice meal. And so in both, she's like, "What? You can't just go. You need to stay for supper. I bought this and this and this. You have to stay. There's just no other way around it." And so he is convinced, and he does stay for supper. And throughout this story, she's always having to convince him to do anything. A relationship shouldn't be like this. The other person shouldn't always need constant convincing the way Hubbel does. But yeah, ultimately him staying for supper, this kind of leads to them being in a relationship. But again, I still don't understand why she was so desperate to be in a relationship with him. Is it simply because he's just handsome and charming? I guess that's it. And he's a good writer. There's that. She loves his novel that he had written. So I guess it's his talent that she loves, and his potential, perhaps. But also the first time they have sex, I kind of because it's so unromantic, and it sort of sets the stage for their whole relationship, in my opinion, where she is the one who is awake, actively trying to make things happen throughout their time together, while he is just sleepily going through the motions. Also, the movie does montages of their happy times together, and then the scenes we really sit with are often the negative ones, which again made me not, I wasn't rooting for this relationship as much as I would have liked. And then later when he tries to break up with her, but once again, she is crying and begging and convinces him to stay with her, she also says the line, "No one will ever love you the way I do. No one will love you as much as I do." And this is a me thing, but I hate hate that phrase. And when people say that, obviously they say it when they're being broken up with. And it's just so manipulative and degrading. Like, no, asshole, I'm a lovable person. I will find other people who love me just as much, who will love me better than you love me. So don't try to act like no one will love you like I do. Like, that's a bunch of crap. So again, that's a me thing. I just hate that line so much. And so, yeah, when she uses that on him, I'm just like, shut up. But honestly, her love is kind of pushy and controlling, while his love is kind of disrespectful and apathetic. And so again, I just don't see them as a super romantic couple, if I'm being honest. I know that's a very controversial opinion. People love this movie and they're just like, oh, Hubbel and Katie, like, oh, they could have been so good together. But I'm just not seeing it. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I was not rooting for them as a couple. They just seem so incompatible. And also when he's trying to break up with her, he tells her, like, if we just lived in your apartment and never went outside, then yeah, we would be great. But we do need to leave the apartment, and in the outside world, we just don't mesh. And no relationship exists in a bubble. And so how compatible you are with each other's beliefs and friends and family and work is a huge deal. And so honestly, I thought he was right to think that the relationship needed to end. But in the scene where they end up getting back together, there is a line in the book. So real quick, the line I'm about to mention, it might not have been from this particular argument. I was trying to find it in the book and now I can't find where it is. But I just wanted to clarify or correct that it might have been said at a different point in the book. Now I'm not sure because I can't find it, but I know it's in there somewhere. So anyway, there is a line in the book where he says something like, "What do you want?" And she says, "I want us to love each other." And he says, that's the trouble, is that we do love each other. And that's what makes this all so difficult, is because we're always bumping heads and yet we love each other, and that's what makes it hard. And in the movie, they include the first line when she says, "I want us to love each other," but then they don't have the second line when he says that's the problem, is that we do love each other. And so I know this is one of those things where Laurents, he was really fighting to keep this line, but obviously it was cut. And I thought this was a great section in the book, and so I'm not sure why the movie chose to get rid of the second half of that part. But yeah, anyway, ultimately, despite them loving each other, the only way this relationship is going to work is if one of them changes for the other, and that is ultimately what happens, is Katie changes who she is in order to keep Hubbel, especially in the book. The movie, maybe not so much really, but in the book, that is what happens. Because to move on to the California section, so when the House of Un-American Activities Committee drama starts to happen, Katie is still very extreme with her politics. Extreme, like she's fighting for a good cause. But he asks her, "You need to lay off the politics because I'm working in the industry, and having a wife who is so active is going to hurt my career and is going to hurt the relationships we have with important people." And so she does, and she steps back from her political activism. And even before this, she had already kind of started to become someone she never envisioned herself to be in some ways. But then, yeah, eventually she steps back from her politics almost entirely. And then later on, she walks in on him having sex with one of their friends' wives in the projection room. And when she makes it known to him that she knows about this, he is so laissez-faire about the whole thing. And again, is just so disrespectful to her in the way he's addressing it. And he cheats on her in the movie too with an old girlfriend. By the way, she is also in The Great Gatsby. She played, Jordan. She was Jordan in The Great Gatsby. But yeah, in the movie, she is now with their friend, and then the two of them end up having an affair. But in the book, he then cheats on her again when he is out of town for work. But this second time is not in the movie. But eventually in the book, an old college communist friend of Katie's names her as a communist. And at first, when Hubbel tells her about this, she laughs it off, thinking it's not a big deal. But then she realizes the seriousness of this matter and how Hubbel being married to someone who has been named, that's going to ruin his career. And so this, combined with him cheating Also, in the book, there is a scene where she's driving through California and she sees a young woman rallying people together at a protest, and she is reminded of her old self that she has lost. And so a combination of all of these things come together and cause them to decide to end the marriage. Whereas in the movie, he never has her abandon her politics in the same way, but they do get in arguments over it, and that combined with the affair is what leads to their relationship to end. And apparently they did film scenes about her being named, but this was cut from the film. And I really wish the movie had focused more on the communist McCarthyism stuff going on in Hollywood and her being named, because the movie chose to focus more on the romantic aspect of this. And I just felt like the book, it was more layered and that it also got so much into the politics at the time. And because this book spans like almost 20 years, there's a lot of interesting historic political stuff that is gotten into that I really liked. And so the movie choosing to just focus on the romance aspect, I just found less intriguing. Although I did read that this was one of the first movies to portray the McCarthyism in Hollywood, so it was a big deal that they showed as much as they did, but I still think it's a shame that they ended up cutting those parts from the film. And again, like I said, Arthur Laurents himself wrote the screenplay, and yet he and Pollock butted heads a lot, and he did not like what Pollock was doing with this story. And he claimed that Pollock knew nothing about love or politics, which made him totally inept at directing a political-themed romance. And in the movie, we see Hubbel getting frustrated with the adaptation process, and it was pretty meta in a way that I liked. But it's funny that Pollock kept those scenes in that showed what a pain Hubbel was having and trying to keep the spirit of his book, because that was how Laurents himself was feeling. And so it's like, did Pollock realize, like, this is what your own screenwriter is literally going through? And so it was pretty meta with how that actually was how Laurents was feeling in the moment while filming this movie. And in the past, people said that this book, Laurents was inspired to write it based on a friendship he had with a woman in college. So this woman he knew was the inspiration for Katie. But at some point later on, Laurents said that the true inspiration for this book was the relationship he had with Farley Granger. And so Laurents was Katie and Granger was Hubbel. And there are lines like, "I want us to love each other, but that's the trouble," that he and Granger verbatim said to each other. Which again is one of the reasons he was so adamant that he wanted it in the movie, and yet it wasn't. But also the McCarthy era is one of the things that brought their relationship to an end. And they also came from very different backgrounds, just like Katie and Hubbel did. And so, yeah, they just didn't always align. And so it's interesting to think of this as actually being a queer love story that takes place in the golden age of Hollywood leading into the McCarthy era. And I think it would be so cool to get this story redone and have it be part adaptation, but also part based on the real life of Arthur Laurents and Farley Granger. So I think they should do that. Maybe not do it as a full-on remake, because people would be up in arms about them remaking this movie because it's so beloved by many. So maybe not market it as a remake, but some sort of, the true story behind the way we were kind of a thing. And it's funny because obviously it would be about a queer couple and people would probably complain that they were making it woke. But what's funny is that the queer aspect is actually the reality of what the true story is. It's just that when he wrote the book in the early 70s, he probably felt that he had to make it a straight couple. So kind of funny how that all works out. I don't know if funny is the right word, but you know what I mean. But a few things I want to mention, some final thoughts. So in the book, we do see both of their parents when they get married. Their parents are at the wedding, and Hubbel's parents are very cold and not loving at all, which was reminding me of the mom and Ordinary People. But when Katie sees this, it makes her feel closer to Hubbel in a way, while also feeling sad for him that this is the home he was raised. And like, no wonder he's so closed off, is because like, look at the people who raised him. Meanwhile, Katie's father is there and he will not shut up about politics to anyone who will listen. And so you kind of see where Katie gets it from. And then also the scene at the college dance in the movie, Hubbel cuts in between her and Frankie and they have this romantic moment. Whereas in the book, she is dancing with Frankie and she thinks Hubbel is walking towards her, when then he just keeps going and he walks past. And so she's like, dang it, I thought he was coming towards me. And so then later that night, she decides to lose her virginity to Frankie. And Frankie is also a virgin. And so she's like, hey, we gotta lose it sometime. It may as well be now. And Frankie is the one who later on names her as a communist. Also in the movie, like the book, she starts to have feelings for him when his paper is read because it makes her realize he is deeper than she thought, and he has a talent that she is so desperate for herself, right? So she falls for him because she's like, wow, he's being so vulnerable and so deep. And yet throughout their relationship, like I just mentioned, he's very closed off. And when she asks him about the war, because he has a shrapnel injury, and when she asks him about details about that or his past or his childhood, whatever, he just won't open up about anything. And so she loved him for being open and vulnerable, and yet in real life, in their relationship, he's kind of a closed book. But I do find the theme of two people who are trying to make a relationship work, despite it being clear they aren't the best for each other, an interesting theme, because this is something that happens a lot in real life, right? And so seeing the inner workings of relationships like this, I do like, and so I can appreciate that aspect of this movie. And it's not really like Die My Love, but Die My Love is also about a couple who love each other, I guess. Yeah, they care about each other. They love each other, but they also have a very unhealthy dynamic going on. So again, trying to make a relationship work when it's like, should you be together though? So anyway, that's just some self-promotion for you to go watch my video for Die My Love. But when it comes to book versus movie, which one wins? I just hit my fingers on the table when I lifted my hand. Kind of hurt. Anyway, when it comes to which one wins, they're both pretty comparable, and yet ultimately I will say that the book wins. Also, I did finish this book much faster than I thought I would. When I want to finish it by a certain time, I'll give myself like a page count I need to read each day. And I finished this way faster than I was scheduled to. And so once the ball got rolling, I just wanted to keep reading. And again, it focuses more on the politics, which the movie shows, and yet they also shy away from that in some ways. And I do think Streisand is great, and she in some ways has more to do as Katie than Redford did as Hubbel. And she was nominated for an Oscar, by the way, in this movie. But Redford, of course, does have a good screen presence. But this might be controversial, but I feel like he's better suited to movies that have maybe more of a comedic vibe to them. I love him in The Sting and Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, and both of those they have some drama to them, but they also have a lot of comedy, and I think he's great in those roles. I really want to watch Barefoot in the Park, which is also like a romantic comedy with him and Jane Fonda, so I want to give that one a watch. But yeah, this and The Great Gatsby are more straight dramas, and yeah, I don't like him quite as much in dramas. Of course, he's still a great actor, and again, he has that charisma, and he is, of course, very handsome. But yeah, I just feel like maybe Streisand perhaps outshined him a bit in certain moments, and she was just better suited to the role. He has the look of Hubbel, but yeah, anyway, Robert Redford is a great actor. I don't want to hate on him, especially since he's dead. He was a talented actor. He's a fantastic director. Ordinary People is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's so incredible. But yeah, ultimately, that is my thoughts on The Way We Were. I know I have some opinions that people might disagree with, and that's fine. Comment your thoughts down below. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you have not already. And once again, sign up for my Patreon if you want to get bonus book versus movie videos. And I will see you next time. Bye.